Something just happened that's never been seen before. 10 African nations stood up and said no to the United States, not just to any offer, but one directly from Donald Trump. We're talking about billions in aid, exclusive trade deals, and military alliances, all flatly rejected. Why? What made these countries risk it all to defy one of the world's most powerful leaders? In a move that's shaking up international politics, Africa just sent a message loud and clear. The old rules no longer apply, and what happens next could reshape the global balance of power forever. In early 2025, Donald Trump made what many called a bold pivot in U.S. foreign policy, offering sweeping deals to African nations in a calculated effort to reassert American dominance on the continent. These weren't small gestures, they were multi-billion-dollar packages, promising military backing, infrastructure development, loans, medical advancements, and trade incentives. But what happened next? The world was stunned. 10 African countries said no. At the heart of this backlash lies a deeper conflict, one about sovereignty, power, and the politics of partnership. Trump's offers, while polished with diplomacy, came with unspoken strings. Countries were expected to cut ties with China, allow U.S. military bases, surrender control over natural resources, and even adopt foreign positions on global conflicts. From Ghana to Egypt, African leaders pushed back, exposing what they saw as a veiled attempt at neo-colonial control. This isn't just about one leader or one deal. It's about an entire continent refusing to be dictated to any longer. So what drove these nations to take such a monumental risk? And what does this moment mean for the future of Africa and the world? Let's break it down country by country. Number 10. Ghana. Strings attached? We're not interested. Ghana, a beacon of Pan-African pride, shocked the world when it turned down a $500 million U.S. aid package. But it wasn't just about money. Trump's offer came with fine print. Ghana had to cut economic ties with China and allow U.S. military operations from its strategic ports. For a nation that has fiercely guarded its independence, this was a red line. Officials didn't mince words, calling it a geopolitical power grab, 21st century colonialism in disguise. Accepting the deal meant allowing U.S. access to intelligence networks and veto rights over Chinese infrastructure projects. Ghana's response? Swift and firm. They said no. In retaliation, the U.S. canceled visa privileges for top Ghanaian officials, a clear warning to others. But Ghana didn't back down. Instead, it doubled down on regional partnerships like the African Continental Free Trade Area and China's Belt and Road Initiative. The public stood behind their leaders. Civic protests called for transparency and sovereignty. For Ghanaians, this wasn't just about aid. It was about dignity. Number 9. Nigeria. We won't sell our soul for oil. Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation and its largest oil producer, was offered billions in energy tech and trade deals. But in return, the U.S. demanded control over 50% of its oil sector. That sparked a firestorm. Politicians, the media, and citizens across party lines branded the deal economic colonization. The president's rejection speech was thunderous. We're not for sale, not our oil, not our future. Rather than isolate Nigeria, the rejection galvanized new alliances. Russia and Brazil stepped in with investment offers. Within weeks, Nigeria's National Petroleum Corporation announced a landmark joint venture with China. The U.S. threatened sanctions, but Nigeria remained unshaken. It became the case study for standing strong and still winning. Number 8. South Africa. BRICS over bullies. Long considered a bridge between the West and the global South, South Africa was offered billions in trade perks on one condition: leave BRICS. The United States wanted South Africa out of its alliance with Brazil, Russia, India, and China. The cost of remaining in BRICS? Retaliatory tariffs and lost U.S. military tech. President Cyril Ramaphosa didn't flinch. We're not pawns. We won't isolate our friends. Public rallies erupted with chants demanding freedom from Western coercion. Instead of backing down, South Africa strengthened BRICS cooperation, passed new trade laws, and sealed fast-track tech deals. The message was unmistakable. Africa is choosing freely, not under threat. Number 7. Ethiopia. No to the drone deal. Trump's administration proposed turning Ethiopia into a drone hub for U.S. operations in East Africa. In exchange, advanced military aid, equipment, and millions in funding. But the terms were alarming. The U.S. wanted autonomous military authority, unrestricted airspace access, and espionage-level intelligence sharing. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed didn't hesitate. We don't lease our sovereignty. The phrase trended instantly across Africa. Hosting a U.S. drone base would make Ethiopia a target for extremists and foreign retaliation. Demonstrators filled the streets of Addis Ababa. No bases, no battles, no bosses. Ethiopia instead partnered with Turkey, expanded its own drone program, and slashed U.S. military ties. A bold move, one rooted in strategy and national pride. Number 6. Kenya. We won't privatize our nation. The U.S. offered $3 billion in development aid to Kenya, but demanded control over infrastructure projects, from highways to ports. Even worse, disputes would be settled in U.S. courts, not Kenyan law. The backlash was immediate. Kenya's opposition leader called it economic occupation disguised as aid. President William Ruto declared, "Our institutions are not for sale. Our laws are not negotiable." Instead of crumbling, Kenya found alternative funding from the African Development Bank, sealed tech deals with India, and signed infrastructure agreements with South Korea. Kenya didn't just reject, it recalibrated. And in doing so, it proved Africa has choices. Number 5. Tanzania. Guinea pigs? Never. Tanzania was offered a massive health aid package, including top-grade equipment and vaccines, but only if it became a testing site for experimental pharmaceutical trials. There were no clear protocols, no liability safeguards, and a lack of oversight. President Samia Suluhu Hassan responded bluntly, "We're not guinea pigs for foreign labs." The response was fierce. Civil rights activists and medical associations backed the rejection. Instead, Tanzania focused on domestic healthcare innovation and secured ethical partnerships with Sweden and Cuba. Tanzania's refusal wasn't just about health, it was about dignity and safety. Number 4. Senegal. No secret surveillance. Senegal, a rising West African hub, was offered advanced telecommunications systems by the U.S., systems that promised faster internet and free nationwide networks. But behind closed doors, the deal allowed U.S. intelligence agencies to monitor digital activity. When this clause was exposed by investigative journalists, Senegal exploded in outrage. President Macky Sall addressed the nation with fire. "We will not allow our people to be watched, tracked, or manipulated. Freedom is non-negotiable." Massive digital protests followed. Tech startups, activists, and journalists all rallied under the hashtag #OrderToRules. Senegal canceled the deal. Instead, it turned to Scandinavian firms for ethical digital infrastructure. This was a turning point. Data sovereignty became a new African battlefront, and Senegal was leading it. Number 3. Uganda. Culture is not for sale. Uganda received a surprising proposal. $1 billion in U.S. infrastructure funds, but with cultural conditions attached. Those conditions included educational reforms, NGO restrictions, and mandatory policy shifts on sensitive social issues. The U.S. insisted it was about universal values, but Ugandan leaders saw it differently. It's an attempt to rewrite who we are, to shape us in someone else's image. President Yoweri Museveni rejected the offer on national television. Religious leaders, traditional elders, and civil society stood behind him. Uganda pivoted to build its infrastructure using regional partnerships and private African investment. And in a symbolic act of defiance, Uganda launched its first locally funded rail project without a single U.S. dollar. The message was loud and clear. Cultural independence matters just as much as political independence. Number 2. Algeria. We remember history. Algeria's relationship with the West has always been cautious, rooted in deep historical scars from colonialism. So when Trump offered security agreements, trade access to U.S. defense tech, and counter-terror intelligence, Algeria hesitated until they read the conditions. Among them, permanent U.S. military presence, oversight of Algeria's energy exports, restrictions on foreign alliances with Russia and China. Algerian officials responded with one line: "We remember what happens when you let empires back in." The rejection triggered huge public pride. Algerians flooded social media with hashtags like #NoteAgain and #AlgeriaFirst. State-run news outlets compared the offer to the treaties of the colonial era, deals signed under pressure, in the name of progress, that ended in domination. Instead, Algeria expanded energy ties with Italy, India, and China, cutting the U.S. out entirely. Number 1. Egypt. The red line has been drawn. And now, at the top of the list, Egypt. A cornerstone of U.S. strategy in the Middle East and North Africa, Egypt was offered the largest package of them all. $10 billion in military upgrades, debt relief, agricultural tech, satellite access, but behind it, control over Suez Canal logistics, mandatory alignment with U.S. interests on Israel and Palestine, secret clauses involving regional intelligence collaboration. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Under immense pressure, shocked Washington, he stood before the Egyptian parliament and declared, "We will not trade our independence." Egypt does not kneel, not to wealth, not to power. The chamber erupted. In Cairo, the people rallied around national unity. In Alexandria, murals went up honoring Arab and African solidarity. And across the region, Egypt's rejection became a rallying cry. Africa will choose its own destiny. So, what does this mean for the world? This isn't just about 10 countries turning down deals. It's about a continental awakening. Africa is no longer the silent recipient of foreign policy. It is becoming the architect of its own future. Donald Trump's offers were bold, yes, but the rejection was bolder. These nations chose dignity over dollars, partnership over puppetry, and sovereignty over submission, as one Nigerian headline put it. We are not the world's backyard, we are its future, and the world better start listening.